Hi, Ify. Welcome to the Overcoming Your Story podcast.
Hi, Miriam. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've been waiting for us to have this conversation. So today we're going to talk about your story and how you came to do the work that you do, because you do very interesting work with Black women and for the community in raising awareness on emotions and knowing how to manage emotions, relationships. So I really love what you do. And I think your voice is very important as this podcast is geared towards Black women, how to connect to themselves and unleash their power and step out of their limiting beliefs. So to start with, how did you grow up? And yeah, let's start with that.
Okay. Um, so I grew up in Nigeria. I was born in the UK, and at some point, my parents moved us back. My dad was very passionate about us having an African upbringing. I didn't really understand it at the time, but when I got older, I did. He experienced a lot of racism because he moved to the UK when he was a teenager. He studied, he worked here, met my mom, got married, and had myself and my twin brother here. But at the time, there weren't a lot of Black people, very, very different to how cosmopolitan the UK is right now. In fact, it was so much of racism that he experienced that he refused for us to have any English names. But most of the Christians, Nigerian Christians who are from the eastern part of Nigeria, where I'm from, always have a Christian name as part of their baptism and confirmation in church. And my dad was like, he just rebelled against it because he experienced quite a lot of racism. So yeah, my formative years were in Kano State in Nigeria, which is in the north. And it was quite interesting living there because it was a predominantly Muslim state. So I have memories of my childhood of us running away from the state to another state for shelter because there were times when there were riots between the Muslims and Christians and people were being killed.
Oh, wow.
So that was quite traumatic.
Mm,
And quite it was quite reflective to understand how people just get killed just because of their faith.
mm.
So yeah, so that was interesting. I went to secondary school in the north as well. By some of my greatest memories are of being raised in the north and having friends who are Muslim but are pretty amazing people. So it's such a contradiction to what you see in the media, where Muslims are made to look like terrorists, but not all of them are like that because some of our closest family friends were Muslim. So
So,
yeah, so that was my childhood. It was quite interesting. Like I felt very very sheltered and very protected by my parents. Very loved. Yeah, it
do you
was. It
have
wasn't
siblings?
siblings. Yeah, I have a twin brother. Then I have a younger sister and a younger brother. So there was four of us. Even though we grew up in the same house, I guess our experiences of growing up were very different, which I think is normal. My parents were quite strict, but and I had, I think for me, one of the most, I don't want to say traumatic, probably dramatic moments in my childhood is constantly being talked to by my dad. He could, if you did something naughty, he could stand you there for hours on end, just talking about what you did and asking you to reflect. And then he'll bring up all this of his own stories about his childhood. So, but it was, my siblings and I hated it because if you got into trouble, you knew, and you have to stand there. Like sometimes you'll be standing there for like an hour, maybe even two, while
Oh,
he's
wow.
talking. My dad he wasn't the kind that would hit you or anything like that. But sometimes my siblings and I were like, whereas my mom is the kind that reflects whatever she had. If she had a shoe, she had a slippers. Anyone who grew up African, now people call it
Yeah.
child abuse, but anyone who grew up African can relate. Like anything that was next to her, she was going to hit you with that thing. But my dad was not like that. He would talk to you.
Yeah.
So sometimes my siblings and I were like, we actually prefer to just hit me and let it be done. than to stand there and just have to listen to this talk, and you have to pay attention because he's going to ask you stuff. Like, you can't, it's not one of those kind of talks where you can switch off
Yeah,
and go
and
into
just
another space. So yeah, but other than that, it was quite an interesting childhood. Yeah, but I'll say my memories of growing up is feeling very very sheltered, very protected, and very loved, but not, I think it was so much to the point that I realized now that I didn't really have a mind of my own, in the terms of, I
mm,
grew up in the typical African background where you were either a doctor or a lawyer or an
yeah.
accountant. So my dad's expectations of me was that you were going to be a doctor. I remember recently my daughter asking me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I actually didn't have anything, because from as early as I can
Mm.
remember, my dad had just always said, you are going to be a doctor.
Oh wow, yeah.
So what it meant was I didn't have
The
any
space,
ambitions or any thoughts of what do I like or what am I good at or what could I possibly be when I grow up. It was only when I got to secondary school that I realized that as much as I was quite smart, and that's the thing, like, I think what they do is the child that's really smart and really focused on their work, they just say to you, you're going to be a doctor. As much as I was smart, as soon as I got to senior secondary school and found myself in the sciences, I knew that I wasn't supposed to be there because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand chemistry. I didn't understand physics. I didn't understand maths. And you needed all those things. And when I say I didn't understand it, like, I wasn't that quick to get it.
yeah,
I will
it
do enough to
wasn't.
pass the exams, but you needed all those things to be a doctor. And yeah,
So
I think
in
for me, that
you,
was the
what did
beginning
you
of my
feel?
of
What
my
did you?
struggles as a child.
Oh. And how old were you then?
I think I was 13. Yeah, I must have
Mm-hmm.
been 13.
So you realized that there's this career path they wanted for you, but in you, you didn't have that. It was not you actually. It didn't
Yeah,
reflect who you were.
yeah. I would have loved to have been in the, because I love the arts, so I would have loved to have studied maybe law or sociology or psychology, something else, not, definitely not medicine, definitely nothing to do with core intense science.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So,
that was
so with
quite hard
regards
for
to your
me.
your father, like how did you navigate that? You just dealt with the,
It it
you
it
just kept on.
actually ended up affecting my relationship with my father. Like, I don't talk about it a lot, but my dad was really proud of me as long as I was working hard, as long as I was doing really well with my studies. Because I was like, you know how, like, you have your golden child that's supposed to be, this is the child that is going to do well. And then when my GCSEs were done, I didn't do that well because I really, really struggled with physics and with chemistry. And he was really disappointed in me, like thoroughly disappointed, because he was like, how did this happen? But then I don't know how it was for you, or I'm sure for other people. I feel like you're probably similar. You didn't really have a chance to talk about these things. Like, it wasn't like I could sit with
Yeah.
him and say, this path that you chose for me is not really the path. There was no conversation. This is just who you were going to be. This is what you were going to do. And I saw my relationship with him just decline from there on. I remember going to uni and I couldn't obviously get into medicine because I didn't have the grade. So I had to do zoology or microbiology. I think I actually got into microbiology and my dad didn't know that. And he eventually pushed for me to get into a course to do zoology and then change to medicine in second year if I passed my grades. And then after the fact, found out that, oh, I actually got into microbiology. But that whole drama, I actually just wanted to go back and redo my exams and go into the arts, but I couldn't
Mm,
because it was
yeah.
like, this is the direction that you're going. I remember
But how
I'll
did
never
that
forget
make
it
you
when we
feel?
traveled to the university to get my admission, my grades, I don't know what you call it, your confirmation that you can go into this uni. I traveled alone with my dad, and I was dealing, now I know that it was anxiety, then I didn't know it was that. I was so sick. Like I was throwing
Oh,
up. But I wasn't physically sick. I was sick on the inside. Like
yeah,
the reality that I was going down this path that I wasn't supposed to go down. And my dad didn't even speak to me. He didn't acknowledge everything that was going on. He didn't, like, he just acted like I wasn't there and I wasn't experiencing. Like, if you were with a child, you could see I was very distressed. I couldn't eat. I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, but he didn't say a word to me. And this was a
yeah,
long trip. Like when you travel by car in Nigeria from the north to the western part of Nigeria, you're traveling for like 12 hours.
yeah. Wow.
And he didn't say anything to
Ah,
me.
12 hours.
No,
He didn't say, wow.
because he was just disappointed. And I think the fact that I was now struggling with the trauma of everything, I think that even annoyed him the more. And he just didn't say anything to me. And that,
Yeah,
go
because
ahead.
as parents too, when we don't know how to manage our emotions, when we see other people showing their emotions, actually can be distressing. And sometimes people react by kind of shutting down.
Yeah.
As you said, behaving as if you're not there, even though you're throwing up, you're showing all these signs that there's something
Yeah,
wrong, right?
something wrong.
Yeah. But
And
how
that's
did
how
you
my dad was. I
feel?
love him so much. He's late now. He passed away in 2015. But he
Oh,
was not
sorry.
an emotional person. He didn't do emotions. He was
Mm-hmm.
just like a blank. So yeah, so for him, you showing emotion, you're right. I never thought about it like that, but it was probably he didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, yeah. Most of the time when people cannot manage it, they just shut down. They're there, but it's distressing them. So it can even get them upset. So for to not be upset, you know, they just do that. But how did that make you feel to see that your dad was disappointed in you? And how,
To be
was it
honest, it's only
heavy?
now that I realized it was trauma. Then
Mm-hmm.
for me it was just how do I get myself out of this? I wasn't really processing it like, oh, my dad is not responding to me or he's not talking to me. There was no thought of that. It was just how do I do better? How do I make him happy and how do I make him proud of me? So I knew I was going to have to go down this path, but
Wow.
there was nothing I could do.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you say because I hear many Africans say that, and it's a reality for many Africans where they have a set path of what they will become, and I hope, I'm sure you agree with me that I hope that things are changing because when we understand what a child is about, children come to the world with their characteristics, their personality, and every child is different. You're a mom, you know that already. Every child is different. And when we have these set paths, we don't take into account who the person they are. And that is clearly what happened for you. It's like telling a fish to climb a tree, when you're studying chemistry and then it's not your thing. And we
Yeah.
do a lot of that,
Yeah.
forcing people to be things that they are not.
Yeah.
Um,
And the way they did it in my secondary school was if you were really smart, and when I say smart, it just means you're focused on your work and you will get a good grade. You were put in the sciences. If you were average, you were put in the social sciences. And if you were literally failing through school, you went into the arts. And it
oh,
was
wow.
so weird. Like, it was such a weird way to do things because
Yeah.
that's not how you analyze a child's ability. So it was, yeah, it was just a disaster for me.
Oh, wow. So
I
did you
can't
go?
really hear you. You sound very low.
Oh, again. Let me see. It's on. Let me try to get closer. So can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's a
If I'm
lot
close
better.
like this.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, did you go on to study microbiology, or did
I ended
you
up studying
change?
zoology. So many times I just wanted to drop out because I tried to change to medicine in the second year, but my head of department realized that nobody in that class, obviously, who wants to study zoology? No one. And she refused to let anyone do a transfer in second year.
Oh,
But then at some point my twin brother left Nigeria for the UK. Like he literally just upped and left. That's a story for another day. But what that meant for me was I now couldn't leave. I had to finish my course. Like I kept telling my dad, I don't want to be here. I want to go back to the UK. I want to leave. And he just kept saying, don't be like your brother. You need to finish. Because my brother came to the UK and started all over again. And I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
do the same thing. My dad was like, you're just going to lose so many years, which in hindsight, I think I should have just started all over again. But he said no. And again, because I didn't want to disappoint him, I finished the course. But for me, looking back, the experience of uni, yeah, that was fine. But the course itself, I just felt like it was an absolute waste of time.
Yeah, I
Like,
can imagine.
I didn't use it for anything at all.
So that responsibility, that weight you had as the child who was going to succeed, how did you manage that? It must have been heavy to carry.
Yeah, I think it was just a weight I carried all my adult years. Being the first daughter, there's so much expectations. You need to be the responsible one. You have to be, doing what your parents want. So I just focused on my work, finished. But as soon as I was done with that course, I didn't even wait. I was out of Nigeria like immediately. There's something called the youth service. If there's any Nigerians listening, they would know what it is. I didn't do that. Like I didn't like I just wanted out. I wanted to start life on my own terms and do what I wanted to do. I was 23 at the time and I just left the country. And
Wow.
I moved and that was how I moved to the UK. And of course, when I got here, I had to navigate now, who am I? What can I do with my life? And it was really hard because I didn't have any direction in terms. I had done this course that I wasn't really sure what I could possibly do with. And then coming to the UK, I realized that education mattered, but not as much as it did in Nigeria. At that age, trying to find a job, all they kept asking you was, do you have any experience? How am I going to have an experience when I've never worked?
Yeah.
So it was all about working and trying to build an experience and deciding for myself what I was going to do. To cut a long story short, I ended up in project management, business analysis to start with, and then project management. And that was how I built a career for myself. I did professional courses. Yeah. And I ended up,
Amazing.
yeah. And I found out that that was something I was really passionate about because I'm a people person. I love people. I love talking to people. I love working with people. I'm very good at building relationships with people so that they can do the work that needs to be done. And it's a life skill, really, managing projects because it's something that you do all through, in your business, in your day to day life as a parent. And I'm just lucky enough to do it as work. So, yeah.
So you that point where you got to the UK and then you're wondering like who is Ify? What does Ify like? That's I think that's how sometimes when we come from out of childhood, when as you said you were sheltered but you didn't have that space to protect and to express yourself.
Mhm.
How did you realize that that was what was happening, and how was that for you
To be honest,
personally?
that was hard. That was hard. And I will say it took me another at least 10 to 15 years to finally realize who I was. It was a very difficult question to answer. And looking back on my life, I want to do differently with my children. Like even now, I'm so excited that my children are already asking themselves, are talking about what they want to be, what they want to do, thinking about their interests, already talking about setting up businesses and things like that. Those were not things that I processed as a child. I think that
Yeah.
this generation is so different and so much more advanced than we ever were. So it was as much as I asked myself those questions, a lot of the time, the realities of life, of having to pay bills for myself now, having to be an adult, was more intense than the opportunity to sit and process. Because as much as you want to
Mm.
process all those things, you don't have time. You need to go
Yeah.
to work. You need to
Mm.
pay the bills, and the wheels kept churning. So it took me so many different things happening for me to get to a point where I realized that what I was most good at was building relationships with people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time, the thing that you are called to in this life is something that you've always done. Now,
Yeah.
rewind back to secondary school. Girls, I went to an all girls school, and people had cliques. People had this person that was always their friend from the beginning of school till the end of school for the 6 years or whatever years they spent in secondary school. I never had that. I was everybody's friend. I know sometimes they say everybody's friend is nobody's friend, but the funny thing was I had a deep, close relationship with every group of people that I met, such that even when I reconnected with a lot of these people decades later, it was like it never stopped. Like I could still build authentic, deep relationships with them. And that's because that's who I am. Like I'm called to people, I'm called to connect with people on a deeper level. I'm called to help people discover who they're meant to be. Whereas a lot of people can't do that. People just know how to be a friend to this one person. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually it came across in my career. It came across in Connecting Stories, which is a platform I created to empower, educate, and inspire the Black community, especially women, on how to navigate life issues. But even though now it's a platform called Connecting Stories, the truth is I've done that since I was in secondary school. I'd
Yeah.
always connected people. I'd always been in groups of people. I'd never been that one person who just had this best friend that I rode with. It was the same in university, and it followed me all through my life. So I just say this to say, for a lot of us, we spend a lot of time chasing this thing that we're supposed to be when who we are is always who our story had been from the very beginning.
Yeah, you're so right.
Yeah,
Especially that society doesn't recognize it as a major skill, but actually
exactly.
your talent was there and obvious to everyone. It's just that nobody was ready to
Yeah,
see because the lens they were using was about, getting you into science. But your talent has always been there
yeah.
and visible. Yeah.
Yeah, and even for me, like I would never have seen it with as anything because, like, what does that mean? What does that have to do with anything? How is that going to pay the bills? But
Yeah,
it does. A lot of the
it
time,
does.
the thing that we need to be who we are is right in our hands. It's not this new, amazing skill that we need to go and discover and be. It's always been in us. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's so amazing. Yeah, I'm so inspired right now because I came to your podcast and it's true. You have this talent of you create such a safe space, and with you, like it was the first time in my life I was sharing my story, like speaking about it, because I always mention it, but like the details of it, I never talked about it. I had not to that point talked about it. And then I came to your podcast and something magical happened because I don't know, it was just a magical moment. And then I managed to tell you my story. And even I've listened to that podcast episode and other episodes of your wonderful podcast a few times. And I'm just amazed. It's really a talent to be able to create that space that welcomes people with all of somebody. That's what you do. You don't just welcome what can the public accept. You welcome someone and all of them, and it's not easy to do.
Thank
So
you. Thank you for
please,
saying that.
no, it's true. Please keep on keep on doing what you do. So how came you then now you do this work where I know you're studying to become a therapist and you're a coach. So how did that passion come about? I feel as if this is initially what you should have studied, from your story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Looking back now, I think I should have studied psychology in university, and who knows where I'd be by now. But then at the end of the day, I feel like every day our story is still being written, so it's not too late. So I'm now studying to be a psychotherapist, which has taken me on another amazing journey, and I'm learning so much, and I'm enjoying even meeting the people on my course who are all training to be psychotherapists as well. My tutor is pretty amazing, but I when I started working on Connecting Stories, it was because I was meeting, my circle was growing so much, and I was meeting so many women, and every woman I meet wants to have a deeper relationship with me in terms of telling them how they can navigate some of their challenges, and also wanting me to just listen to their stories. But you can imagine it's only one me. Like, it became overwhelming really quickly, building all these relationships. And of course, I started to offend people because some of those women would want exclusive relationships with me, which is what we do as women. It's like the whole my best friend kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that I wasn't called to that. So I decided one day, I just thought, why don't I create a space where women can come together and share their stories? And that's how Connecting Stories was born. Because to my shock, a lot of these women that were telling me these things or trying to build these relationships with me didn't actually have a support system. And I
Mm.
can't, for me personally, I honestly cannot imagine my life without the support system of my inner circle, of the women who encourage me at the times when I have meltdowns, when I'm going through very significant challenges in my life. But there are a lot of women who don't have that. And that was how I created Connecting Stories. But then the more I talked to these women at these events that I did, I realized that there's a huge gap in the Black community for therapy and counseling, because we always think that therapy is for people who have gone crazy, not realizing that every single one of us needs therapy. Every single one of us has childhood trauma to deal with. We're all going through different things at the different milestones of our life, particularly as women. From when you're single, then you meet this guy, then you get married, then you have children or you don't have children. For some women, you don't even get, you're not married. All those things come with their own different levels of trauma. Then you finally get the children. It's a whole different kind of trauma attached to that, depending on how your life story pans out. So yeah, that was how I started doing that. And that's why now, as much as I'm a coach, so I'm a certified coach with the John Maxwell team, I realized that just coaching wasn't enough. There was a need to understand, because you can motivate someone, but not beyond understanding their journey and their story. If you've walked through significant trauma, it's not as simple as just getting up and saying, oh, I'm just going to do something different because a motivational speaker spoke to me.
Yeah,
That was why
because
I went into
because
therapy
society thinks that, oh, it happened a long time ago, you should just forget it and move on
and
with
move
your
on.
life, right? And what they don't understand, that when people live with trauma, actually you're stuck in the time when it happened. You're here,
Exactly.
you look fine, but in your mind, you're stuck at that moment when you were overwhelmed. And I'm just happy that I'm training to be a trauma informed coach. So because the need is really big in our community, and we need to start talking about our emotions. I wonder, in your personal life, how have you navigated talking about emotions with your family and your friends? How has that been? Because yeah, I see that talking about emotions is complicated.
It is. And I'm very comfortable talking about emotions. I'm very comfortable being vulnerable with people. And I don't know how to do surface relationships. I don't know how to have small talk. I love to have authentic conversations with people. And somehow it's easy once you're open yourself, because I'm always willing to share my own stories and my own weaknesses and challenges. I find that it makes it easier for other people to talk about theirs as well. However, there are still people in my family or my friends who are not comfortable talking about their emotions. And I think that that's just a struggle that we will have for a while in the Black community, because we naturally don't do emotions. We naturally don't want anybody to know that things are not the way they seem, that underneath the surface we are struggling. So it's a journey. That's what I'll say. It is a journey. But my training as a psychotherapist, I would have to say, has helped me a lot. Going through counseling as well has helped me a lot, because part of my course is that you have to go through that whole
Hmm.
process, because you can't heal people from a place of hurt yourself.
Oh wow,
So you
yeah.
have to unpack all of your own trauma as well in therapy. So yeah,
So you go to therapy and you recommend therapy.
yeah.
Yeah, because I also go to therapy. Every Thursday morning, I log on a platform and I speak to my therapist. And it's wonderful because these things, as you said at the beginning, we think it's for mad people, but actually it's so, so useful
Mm-hmm.
to to be able to unpack all these emotions or make sense of our lives. And
Yeah.
um, and that's how we will connect to our present and actually live our life today and not be stuck in comparison or thinking, oh, this person is doing so well. Why am I struggling? Actually, everybody struggles.
We're
That's
all
the
struggling.
we are all struggling and trying to make sense of it. So,
Yeah.
so how do you take care of yourself? I know you're a busy mom. Okay, no, I have to ask a mom question. So, how did motherhood, you know, I think motherhood reveals layers of ourselves we didn't know. How did that happen for you?
That was quite a journey for me. I had two miscarriages before I had my first child.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks. And it was probably the most traumatic thing I've ever walked through because I didn't even understand what was going on. Why was my body failing me? Like, what is this? What is this? Because you're just taught when you're a child, oh, don't sleep with a boy. If you touch a boy, if you let a boy touch you, you get pregnant. And then you get married and get pregnant, and then you realize that, oh, it's not as simple. Even the journey of trying to get pregnant is not as simple as they say. So yeah, so that was how my journey to motherhood started. Then I found out I had fibroids. Then I was pregnant with my first child. The whole 9 months was hell. That's the best way to describe it. I was sick the whole 9 months. At
Oh,
first, I
wow.
was so sick. I was severely ill the first 3 months and in and out of hospital. And they were like, oh, it's just the morning sickness. You'll be fine. So I kept waiting to get to that 3 months. And the 3 months came and passed. And I was like, what is going
Oh,
on?
my goodness.
Yeah, so for the whole 9 months, at certain times I was having early contractions, and I think at 24 weeks, the doctor was saying we might have to take her out, and there's no chance of her surviving. And yeah, pregnancy was another level of trauma for me,
Yeah.
and my second pregnancy was difficult as well. But I'm thankful that I have the two kids. I eventually had to have fibroid surgery, and I
Mm.
remember when I went for the scan, the doctor kept asking me how on earth I could have two kids. Like he kept saying, are you sure? Like he's like, with the amount of and how massive your fibroids are, I don't understand how you could ever have birth children. So my children are, and it makes sense because all through the pregnancies, they kept talking about possibly terminating them because I was having contractions too early and things like that. So I know that my children are a miracle. My heart
Yeah.
breaks for
Oh,
every
bless.
woman who is going through fertility issues and just walking through this journey of trying to be a mom. So that is, yeah, so that was part of my story as well. And even the experience of trying to raise kids in the UK by yourself. Yes, my mom and my mother-in-law came a few weeks and went back, but that whole process of having no help, having to take your children with you everywhere you went, was not my understanding of how it should be, because in Africa
Yeah.
you have a whole village that is raising
Yeah.
your children for you. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a
I'm in the
journey.
midst of it. It's tough. I can say that it's tough.
Exactly. You have three children
I
yourself, so
have
you
three
know
children, yeah, and they're still
it's a
small. I can
lot.
tell you. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Having no support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's absolutely not how I imagine motherhood. Right.
Yeah.
Back home, for example, in my village, when a woman gives birth, she stays in bed for 1 month. So she only showers and feeds the baby, and then she sleeps. And then people cook. They cook for her. Family just come and stay with her and cook for her for 1 month, and then she still gets a lot of help. So yeah,
Very
after my
different from here.
the day I got out of hospital, the for my first daughter, I went to the grocery store. You know,
Wow.
yep. Okay, I was thinking I was superwoman, and then I paid the bill highly later because
I
I.
know.
But because I mean, if there was someone there, I wouldn't have been right. So
Yeah.
that's the reality of it. But yeah, thank you. But so, how do you take care of yourself? So now, today, how do you? What do you do to take care of yourself emotionally, physically? Like because you have busy days, you do a lot. So, do you manage to carve out time to take care of yourself?
Yeah, I think that self-care is so important. So there's so many things I've tried to put in place to take care of myself, like staying off my phone, staying away from WhatsApp. WhatsApp is like so stressful for me. It feels like work. Having to respond to all these messages and all these groups, trying to just detox myself from social media. It's not easy, it's very difficult, but I try. I go for long walks. one of my favorite things to do is go for long walks. So I try to do that a lot because I'm not a big fan of exercising. So yeah, so I think at the moment the way, and then I also try to zone out sometimes. Like even in my house, I zone out from my husband and my children because I'm just like I can't do this. Like everyone just needs sort yourselves out.
Yeah.
I need to breathe.
The fridge is
So
there. So
yeah, yeah.
good
I have a
luck.
lot of lines, especially at the weekend because the weeks are so intense. I try not to get out of bed too early. I do my prayers and I go back to sleep. And sometimes I just stay in bed, watch TV, and just zone out. I think it's really important.
Yeah.
When the lockdown is lifted, I would like to go on a lot of more spas and holidays by myself. Even if
Mm.
it's just a staycation for a couple of days by myself, it's not something I've done before, but I really really want to do that. I think it's really important to go on retreat. I've gone for retreats with other women.
Hmm.
That's really good, but because I'm usually the one organizing it, it ends up being work for me.
Yeah,
So yeah,
hectic
I
for
look
you.
forward to when the lockdown is lifted and I can just go away by myself.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought of that. You're inspiring me now. Even like a one
Yeah,
day, where you stay in a hotel and then
yeah,
spend the night and come back the next
yeah,
day. That
just by yourself, and
just,
then you just
yeah,
have
just
to,
that mental space, huh?
mental space, and then tell the
Yeah.
husband, please watch the kids. I'll be back, and you
Yeah.
feel so much
Yeah.
better for it.
Yeah. When you come back smiling, not tired.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Any last words before we wrap up, Ify, my dear?
I think I'll just say to anyone listening, if you are still trying to discover yourself, just spend some time going back into your childhood and thinking about who you were and the things that made you tick, if you like, and you realize that that thing that you've been pursuing is not this massive, amazing thing. Sometimes it's just who you've always been, and you just need to reconnect with that inner child, and birth who you're supposed to be.
Wow, thank you. Amazing. It resonates a lot. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and I was saying I'm an introvert, and then as we talked, and then I told her that when I was really little, I was very outgoing, very loud child, insulting all the kids in the neighborhood. Okay, they also insulted me back, but like that kind of child, of running around with other kids, not introverted. And then and then I realized just in that moment that it's life that made me an introvert. And I was not actually an introvert from the start. So it's also, yeah, reconnecting and seeing, going back to the journey and seeing the person we were before all these things happen, and then bringing that person back,
Yeah,
to, yeah. And that's the essence of this podcast: overcoming your story to find your true self. So
yeah.
thank you so much, my dear Ify.
Thank you for having me. This was really good. I enjoyed having this conversation with you.
And so where can our listeners find you?
On my podcast, Connecting Stories podcast, it's on Apple, Spotify, and Google. You can also find me on Instagram at Connecting Stories. I'm always on Instagram. So, and on Clubhouse, my name is Ifi Bamiboye. So, yeah, I'd love to connect with your listeners.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Bye.